Okay, so some use cases for S3: storing documents, images, PDFs. Again, some of the advantages here is that it's very, very durable, right? And you can control access to it very, very tightly. Other use case is source code, right? Basically, when you have an application that you're developing, a good place to put the application is in S3 because you can actually then deploy it from there, which is what I'm going to show you how to do in my demo later on. Great for backups, so file backups, database backups, storage volume snapshots. S3 is great for that. Log files, so any log files from your server, from your applications, they'll probably generate it locally, but it's very easy to install an agent like, say, a Flume, or even an agent that is more from Apache, things like that, that can actually write your log files into S3. S3 is used for a data lake in big data environments. And so basically what happens is we collect lots and lots of raw data, and then we figure out later how we're going to process it and how we're going to do analytics on it and access it. So we can put all the raw data in a data lake. And the reason why S3 is great for a data lake is because there's no limit to how much data you can store in S3. In other words, you don't have to create a 100 gigabyte bucket or anything like that. There is no provisioning of storage for S3. You just put objects into it and there's no limit. And pretty much you pay for just what you store. So it's a really good service that has no limits to the amount of data you can put in it. So a lot of people use it for a data lake. Then finally, another good use case is a static website hosting. So as I was talking before, you could have a website, that's coming from, a web server or something like that. Maybe it's a PHP website or, something else. So it's got some dynamic content, but the static content, we can store that in an S3 bucket. Well, another thing you can do with S3 is if you just have a static web page. Now, if it's just HTML and it's not, PHP or .NET or something like that, you could put the HTML in the S3 bucket as well. And then you could turn the S3 bucket into a static web server. Okay, so it will serve your HTML directly from S3 with no web servers at all. And a lot of people will do this because they want to not have any EC2 servers to manage when they have just like a basic website. Okay, another great feature of S3 is notifications. And this is the idea of there being events that are detected by the service. So for example, when somebody uploads an object to an S3 bucket, that triggers an event known as object created, right? And that could be a put operation, a post, a copy operation, or it could be a multi-part upload operation. And each of those would trigger an event that, hey, a new object has arrived in the bucket. There's also object deleted event. Okay. Now, either of these two events, actually, it's two different types of events, but there's put, post, copy, multi-part, and deleted. So there's like 5. Any of these events can send out a notification when they occur in real time. And there's a service on Amazon called SNS, which allows you to have subscribers in the form of email addresses or SMS phone numbers or queues or lots of different types of subscribers. And when you can have S3 put a message into an SNS topic and then push out simultaneously to all those subscribers in real time. S3 could also directly put a message in the queue service, which is called SQS, the simple queue service. And it can also send a message to trigger a Lambda function. And if you haven't heard of a Lambda function before, this is something worth checking out. We did talk about it a little bit last class. It's basically a compute service where you can upload code, and then that code will be executed according to whatever events trigger it. So you could have S3, for example, trigger a Lambda function that may pull the object that was just uploaded and then transcode it or extract metadata from it and store some metadata in a DynamoDB table or database, right, all automatically. So the idea behind S3 events is you can do event-driven programming, which basically means when something happens, have code like Lambda functions or SQS queues begin doing back-end processing automatically. Okay, so let me show you another demo at this point. And this case, what I'm going to do is just show you a development environment that I have set up here on my desktop. Okay, so this is Eclipse, right? And what I've got is a very simple PHP application. And you can see I have used Composer to install the AWS PHP SDK. And then to make it be used in my code here, I just use this line right here. Auto load, and that's going to use the AWS PHP SDK. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a very simple application here. I didn't want it to be too complicated for demo purposes, so there wouldn't be lots of messy code in here. But this is going to be a very simple application that's going to allow the end user to choose from one of my S3 buckets, right? And then to upload an object into that bucket and then to download the new object if they want. Now, of course, this application needs permissions to use the S3 service. Now, I have no credentials in this code anywhere, right? So the application, my development environment, is going to be reading the credentials from the environment variables, okay, from the environment variables. But when I deploy this in production, it's going to be getting it from an instance role. Again, more to cover this later. So just in my development environment, I'll be using environment variables, but when I get to the production, it's going to automatically be using the credentials from the EC2 instance itself. Okay, so in my application, I put a little note here to say which ones it's using so we can see that difference. Okay, so the first thing it's going to do is going to instantiate an S3 client, right? And this S3 client is going to be set up to use the US East 1 region by default. Okay, so we're going to list my buckets. That's going to list all my S3 buckets, right? Down here, we basically have a simple HTML web form here where we're going to choose a bucket and then choose a file from our desktop and then upload it to the bucket right here. Okay, so this is going to be the operation for the client that's going to upload the object, right? And we're going to make it public read, which means we're going to make it available to make it a public object so everybody can download it. We're just making it, so I can show you how with one operation you can upload the object, plus also set the permissions. Okay. All right. Now, before we show you the application, let me just show you the buckets in my account. Okay, so I've already got these buckets set up in my account, so I'm going to really use this bucket right here, Wade Demo. Okay, I've already only got one file in here, and you know what it is? I've already pre-uploaded the code that I'm showing you, so that's already in the bucket, and we're going to use that later for deployment. Okay, now let me go ahead and show you the app. The application is right here. Again, a very basic application running on my local host. Okay, so it's running at the local host, and it's using credentials from my environment variables right here. So those credentials that I created, they're in the AWS credentials file, right? They're also in my environment variables, and that's where it's reading it. Okay, so the S3 client is first pulling all of my buckets. Here are all the different buckets, right? It's listing my buckets, so I have a drop-down created. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a file to upload, right, from my desktop. Again, I can pick, basically anything I want to pick, right, and then choose upload. All right, so right here from my desktop with the proper credentials, I'm making a call to the S3 endpoint and uploading an object. Right now, the upload, I have my code tell me it's successful, and actually put a link to the actual file. Okay, and there it is. All right, now if I go back to the bucket, there's the file in the bucket. Okay. All right, so there was a good example of using the S3 client and the the AWS PHP SDK to make a very simple application.